Hi, I'm Steve from the Stone Crafting Workshop. Welcome back. I'm quite often asked in the comment sections below my rock tumbling videos how I get rid of my slurry, the waste material that comes out of a barrel. It's essentially stone dust and water with a bit of silica carbide or abrasive powder in it. And it can be a bit of a problem to get rid of. So first of all, I'll show you how I get rid of mine, because I'm in a slightly different situation to most people. But the way I get rid of mine, because I've got quite a lot of slurry, I've got several barrels running, and I also do polishing and wet grinding and wet cutting. But the way I get rid of mine might give you some ideas as to how you can handle yours if you have a fair amount of slurry to get rid of. But after that, I'll show you how I think you can get rid of your slurry if you are struggling to get rid of it. If you might live in an apartment or a small house without much spare room, and you don't want to throw away great, bucketfuls of wet, horrible slurry. And I'll show you how I think you can handle that. It's important to mention that you should not put the slurry from rock tumbling down a drain or down a toilet or down the sink, because it's heavy. The slurry, the stone dust, is heavy and will sink to the bottom of the drain and coat the bottom of the drain and eventually block it up. So don't do that. Get rid of it in other ways. And in this video I'll show you a couple of ways of doing it. So this is an area behind my garage, tucked away behind my garage, where I store all my old stone and bits and pieces I don't use very much. And this is where I deal with my slurry from the workshop. On this side I have the main trug where the slurry comes. This pipe comes from my wet bench in the workshop, so slurry from where I'm polishing and grinding, wet polishing and grinding. And what happens is that the slurry runs out of this pipe and drops into the trug. The slurry settles, and what you're left with on the top of it is water that is relatively clean. Not clean enough to drink, but it's clean. When the water level, as it sometimes does, gets up to this pipe, that then runs into another bucket where exactly the same thing happens. The at that point, slightly dirty water runs into this bucket, and what slurry there is settles. In truth, I don't get much slurry in that bucket at all. Okay? So what happens then is that I'll delve about in the bottom of the trug and I'll dig out a barrel load of slurry that's going quite hard and thick, and that then goes into a bucket, this bucket here, and I'll do that 2 or 3 times a month, or maybe once a month, and this is simply left to settle and left so the water evaporates. And the last time I put something on here was about a week ago, so there's a layer on the top which is soft and sluggish, but as you dig down into it, it gets drier and thicker, and at the bottom it's just like quite dry clay. Once this bucket is very nearly full, I'll just leave it so that the water evaporates, and then I'll break that up and put it in a bag with bits of hardcore and broken brick and anything, old stone that I've been breaking up, and that'll go down the dump. And I dump that as hardcore. I pay £1.50 a bag at my local tip to dump hardcore, and that's the system, and it works really well. And because there's actually very little solid material in the slurry, I only do this I only go down the dump about 3 times a year, so it's not a lot. Let me show you now how I actually wash out my barrels using this trug. As I say, there's a layer of water on top of this. This is cleanish water down probably about 3 inches before it reaches any slurry or sludge at all. And the first thing I do is just take off a couple of little buckets of clean water. And when I say clean, I'm being, relatively speaking, clean. Now I've got a barrel here I need to wash out. I've got my just use the slightly cleaner water just to get rid of the last of the worst. Now I'll then take those out onto my lawn and I'll hose them out with a jet wash just to get the worst of it off, and then I'll go through them in the workshop and clean off the last tiny vestiges of slurry. But essentially they are now clean, and the barrel, get as much of the slurry out. So what we'll do today is to take the slurry out of a 3-pound barrel. This has been running at the 80 grit stage, I think, for about 12 days. This is an Evans barrel, Evans rubber barrel with the O-ring. Not my favourite thing. Take the lid off. I don't know if you can see, the slurry is like a thick pouring cream, if you like, that sort of consistency. And the first thing we're going to do, I've got a jar here, a plastic jar, and I'm using this just so you can see what's happening through the process. And all I'm going to do first of all is take off as much of the slurry as I can and pour it straight into this jar. And the trick with this is to use as little water as you can for the whole process. This is particularly messy because these O-rings on top of these barrels seem to leak fairly frequently. Now with this lot, as you can see, they're starting to come quite reasonably clean. But if you had a situation where the slurry was thick and wasn't readily working, just put, you know, a small half a cupful into your barrel, reassemble your barrel, just put the lid on, you don't have to worry too much, and just put it on your machine and run it for 2 or 3 minutes. And what that'll do, that will mix up the slurry that's left in the barrel with this water and make it more runny. Just put a little bit of water in a tub. I'm just going to wash off this O-ring because it's in the lid, because it's really messy. You can see the stones are no longer coated because the slurry is much thinner. Let's just pour that in our container. And then what we're going to do is do that a couple more times. I'm going to use up that in there. Now, having got rid of most of the dirty slurry into our container, which we're going to leave in that for now, we're now just going to use half a tub of this water, and I'm going to wash off the stones one at a time, which I would do anyway, and just check them and see how they're going on. And there is not much dirt on these at all. The water's staying quite clean, which is what you want. Ooh. Some lovely stones in here. Look at that one. Trying to remember what stones these are. Hold on a tick and I'll tell you. Oh yeah, these are the ones that my wife picked out. I thought there must be, because there's some quite odd ones. Look at that one, it's lovely shape and it's really nice. Anyway, come back in a few minutes when I've finished doing this, and then we'll finish off the job. So have a quick look. What I've done, I've simply taken the stones out of the barrel and rinsed them in this tub of water. Now if you look at the water in this, although it's not clean, it's not in any way, shape or form dirty. You could put that down the drain. There is no meaningful slurry in that at all. And the stones themselves are actually very clean. You could put those in a colander and rinse those under a tap quite safely. There's no slurry on them at all. All you'd be doing is making sure there were no tiny bits of grit stuck to the stones. So the stones are sorted. What we're left with is the barrel. We've got to clean out this barrel. And now in the bottom of the barrel is the last vestiges of the water that's run off of the stones. I'm going to put that straight in the container. And then I'm just going to use a bit of this water and a brush just to loosen off all the slurry around the barrel, on the inside of the barrel and what have you. So there we are now. That barrel is reasonably clean. It's not clean enough to use again. I would have to rinse that out. I take that in the kitchen and I wash that out. But the amount of slurry on it is minuscule. In fact, there's more on the outside than there is on the inside. You need to wipe it. You could simply wash that and the water from that would go down the sink, and there is no slurry in that now. And there we are. So you now, as I say, clean that out, and the lid you could wash in a sink with a bit of soapy water, and you're quite safe letting that run down the sink at that level. So what about this water? We've got a bit more water left over here. This is pretty clean. I would put that on a pot plant, or just pour it outside the door. What about this little lot? Well, what we're going to do with that, we're going to leave it. And we're going to leave it for a couple of days, and I'll come back every now and again and show you what we're going to do. This method relies on you getting rid of the water. As I said, I think I said outside, there really isn't very much solid material in this. If you think about what you put into the barrel, in this case 3 tablespoons of silica carbide, so there's about 3 tablespoons of abrasive. And let's say it produced the same amount of stone dust from around these stones. I very much doubt that. So there's not going to be much in there, if only we could get rid of the water. And we do that by being patient. And what I'll do, I'll put this to one side, and we'll pop back and have a look at that over the next few days. I thought as a matter of interest you might like to see, in best Blue Peter fashion, this is one I did last week. It's exactly from a tumble, and it was an 80 grit tumble, and it produced just as much slurry as this, only I had it in one of these, and I realised that I couldn't film that because you wouldn't be able to see it. And you might like to see how little slurry there actually is in a single tumble of rocks. And all I did was leave this. As I say, it's been left for I think 2 weeks in all fairness, but it was pretty much dry powder like this a week ago. I can take that out, and you can see it's actually quite hard, and it's actually a very good demonstration as to why you shouldn't pour this stuff down your drain. Imagine that, coating the bottom of your drain. It'll quickly block it up. But this you could easily simply put in your waste bin and throw it away. But I'll show you in the course of the next few days what you can do so you don't have to wait as long as this. As I say, this was probably like this in 7 or 8 days, which if you think about it, you're tumbling, if you've got one barrel, you're going to have a gap between cleaning out your barrels of 7, 8, 9, 10 days, and so that would work out perfectly well. So put this to one side, put it somewhere safe where it's not going to get knocked over, preferably put it somewhere warm, and don't put a lid on it. We want the water to evaporate off, and in the course of the week I'll show you how we deal with it to speed that process up a bit. So here we are 24 hours later, and you can see what's happened is the heavier slurry is down here, and then there's a lighter section here, and then this section up here is relatively clean water. And because we want evaporation to be part of this process, I'm going to just tip off this top section very carefully into a jar, and that can go into the pot plants and what have you, and then we'll come back again tomorrow. So our jar has been standing now for just 2 days, and you can see how the slurry has settled, and at the bottom here is the really thick heavy stuff. There's a lighter section here of slightly lighter stuff that's still suspended in the water, and at the top there's a kind of layer of quite clear water. So remember, the idea of this whole process is to try and get rid of this liquid, the water, because it's that causes the problems. So what we're going to do now is you could just leave this, you could leave it for a week, and at the end of the week this would be clear right down to here, but you would still have to siphon off this amount of water off the top, and each time you do that it disturbs the sediment a little bit. So I have found that it's easier just to take a bit off every couple of days, just for this whole process should only take about a week, but you can speed it up a lot by siphoning the water off of the top of the jar. Now let me say at once that this is not an ideal jar to do this with because of this shoulder and lip. Because of that, it disturbs the sediment more as you're siphoning it off. I found it much better using it with something like a yoghurt pot. You could use a small bucket or an empty paint bucket, something like that. But it's okay. So all I'm going to do is siphon off this top layer of water as gently as I can. I think that'll do for now. So what we're going to do now is leave it another couple of days, but with the light like that you can actually see how thick some of this slurry is at the bottom here, look. And tomorrow we'll have another look. So it's now day 4, and you'll notice that I've missed out day 3, and that's because I actually forgot all about this. What we'll do is we'll pretend there's a cunning plan on my part to make this more realistic, because if you're going this route there's going to be days when you forget to tip off the water, and it really doesn't matter. But what you can see now is the water level is from there down to here is relatively clear, with just this small about an inch of thick slurry on the base. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tip the water off and just leave it one other day, just one day. You could at any stage simply throw away what you've got left, and the reason I say that is because there's not much left now. You could fit this into a small container and throw it in the bin. There we are. That water could go on pot plants and what have you, or just go on the garden because it's just slightly murky water. And the vast bulk of the slurry is now in the bottom of this jar, which is relatively thick. Well, I'm going to leave it another day, but you could easily simply pour this into something like a milk container, a cardboard milk container that you're going to throw away, something that you wouldn't normally recycle, and it wouldn't do any harm at all. You could even pour this straight into a waste bin, if you've got a waste bin that's half full of general sort of waste, in the same way that you'd throw away just about any type of liquid. I think it's useful to say that this is completely inert. It's not in any way harmful, it's simply stone dust and water. If you're reasonably patient about this, remember you have at least 7, maybe 8, 9, 10 days or more between each barrel changeover. So, and if you decide that this method suits you and you're just going to leave it in a container somewhere and let it settle out over the course of 7 or 8 days, then that's great. Just tip off the clear water at the top every now and again to speed that process up. But it may be that you're in a bit more of a hurry than that. And I've been experimenting on your behalf because I don't actually need this. I found 2 things that would speed up the process. I've got here a tub of slurry. It's just what I did before. I cleaned out the barrel and left the slurry in the barrel. And there were 2 things I found that would speed up the process. And one of them is this. It's quick set cement. It's the sort of thing you buy in a hardware shop, and it's for making repairs with, and in its normal usage it will go off in 5 to 10 minutes. If you mix it up as a cement and fill a crack in, it goes off in 5 to 10 minutes. This bag cost me £3.50, and what I did, I put 2 heaped teaspoonfuls into a barrel of slurry like this. So I just use this 2 like that, okay? And what happened was that the water, the slurry, settled out in the water really quickly. And in fact, I'll try and show you how much that's settled out, if I can find my funnel. There we go. I've now got, I only did this yesterday afternoon, so it's only been in there for about 12 hours. And there's about 1.5 inches of absolutely clean water on the top. I can't really show you because if I tilt it, it'll... And this is the second advantage of using this, is that you don't disturb the sediment as you're pouring it off. Now you can now see there's a solid lump in the bottom here. It's not actually solid, it's like thick, very, very thick dry clay. And I'll show you how to get rid of that in just a second. But you can see that there's almost nothing in there. There's a little bit of skim on there, but you know, I think that's bloody impressive. And in fact, I'm not sure how quickly that would happen, because it cleared the sediment to the bottom. It dropped within about 20 minutes. So I'd have to experiment more with that to see how quickly you could pour it off. But you can certainly do it the next day. And the other thing I used, similar idea, was plaster. Just ordinary plaster. I'll open the bag out. It's just this multi-finish plaster, but I suspect that almost any type of plaster will do. And in this case, I did exactly the same thing. I had a barrel of slurry, and I actually mixed in 3 heaped tablespoons. And I just mixed it in and left it. And this again, as I say, is the next morning. And you can see it's all gone pretty solid. It's not solid, it's actually like a thick slurry. But the thing is, that's more manageable to throw away than the liquid stuff. This thing here, you know, trying to get rid of it, you know, you've tried it, is a real problem. And the way to get rid of it, I think, the simple way, you could put it into a container, or you know, that you're throwing away, or you can simply put it onto newspaper like that. Wrap it up. And put it in the bin. So that's the plaster, and you could just put that in the bin. It's not going to cause any mess, it's not going to cause any problem. And the sand and cement, which I thought worked better, which is that one there, and that's actually formed a really thick mix at the bottom, which is actually going off hard at the bottom of the bucket. So you want to use an ordinary, I mean, quite honestly, yoghurt pots are just great for everything. And there you are. I wouldn't wash that out. If you wash that out, you're then creating more wet mix that you've got to get rid of. I'll just use that the next time round. And again, wrap it up in newspaper and put it in your bin. So that's it. That's my 2 solutions for speeding up the process. I said to you yesterday I was going to put this out in the sun, which I did do. It still had about, you know, 1/4 inch of water in there, maybe 1/2 inch. And so I left it out in the sun all morning, and then we went out in the afternoon. So I put it in my conservatory, which is like an oven. And the result is now there is no water in here at all. And there it is. It's like a, it's still wet, but it's quite manageable now. And there's not much of it. It's literally only about, well, 3/4 of an inch deep, or 1/2 inch deep perhaps. It's not very much in there. And you could easily, at this stage, simply tip this out onto newspaper and wrap it up and throw it away. So, you know, between tumble changes, you've got plenty of time to just allow this stuff to evaporate out, or to siphon it off, to decant it off. So there's no single clear method there in the course of this video. what I was trying to show you was that there are options, and the key to it is to wash them out in the first place using as little water as possible to get rid of the slurry, and containing that slurry in a container. You don't need to use this, you could use a bucket or a yogurt pot. And then in the days between you changing the barrels over, simply, you know, as I've shown you, pour off the excess water, or simply allow it to evaporate, especially if you've got a very warm place to put it. If I'd have put this in my conservatory on day one, it would now probably be you know, crumbly, just dry and crumbly, because my conservatory, like most people's conservatories, is a really hot place. So thank you for watching. I hope this helps you. If you've got a better way of getting rid of slurry, by all means put it in the information box down below. I'm not proud, I don't know everything, and you know, that would be interesting. And in fact, if you've got a really good way of doing it, I'll make a video about that and credit you, you know, give you your name, because I'm not going to steal your ideas. And it'd be interesting for other people to know other ways of getting rid of slurry. So thank you for watching. I hope it's been useful to you. If you enjoy rock tumbling and anything to do with rocks and stone, please subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. See you again soon.